Meanwhile, Donald Trump has unveiled his first budget, and perhaps unsurprisingly, there are some controversial measures in it. He's cutting more than $10 billion, that's £8 billion, from the State Department and US aid, which works to fight poverty across the globe. Well, the Environment Protection Agency will see cuts of $2.6 billion. That's nearly a third of its entire budget, while defence spending increases by $52 billion to a total of $639 billion. Well, we're joined now by Professor of Political Science Peter Mathews. He's in Long Beach in California. He's also the author of the book Dollar Democracy. Hello to you, Peter. Thank you for joining us here on Sky News. So we have Donald Trump's first budget. What did you make of it? Do the numbers add up?
It's a reverse Robin Hood budget, reverse Robin Hood, where it helps the military-industrial complex and takes money away from education, from the environment, from diplomacy, from housing, from the arts, things that the regular folks need. And so it's not good at all. And coupled with these tax cuts, which are mostly for the wealthiest people, it's creating a downfall in the economy in the near future. It's not the budget will not pass in this form fully. I think some Republicans will be uncomfortable with some of the cuts. For example, legal aid for low-income people to be able to have lawyers when they are accused of a crime. That program is going to be eliminated by his plans. And even Richard Thornburg, a former defense or attorney general, a Republican, said this is wrong. So it's not a good budget, and I think it's going to be very controversial when it goes through Congress. He does have a Republican Congress majority, though, and it's most of it might pass.
Yeah, those cuts you mentioned to welfare and to education, don't they really affect Donald Trump's base?
Yes, indeed. And the cuts that he's proposing in the Obamacare reform, it includes cutting the funding for expanding Medicaid, which is the working class white voters that he got in Republican states who will be affected by being thrown off the healthcare rolls, and cutting to education, including after school and before school programs, many of which go to lower income neighborhoods, including white and minority students, is going to be a disaster for young people. And that is really completely going to backfire on him when he loses support among some of his core base for doing these things. If he gets it through Congress, like I said, some of it may not pass in its form. Some of it may be curtailed. Some of the cuts may be curtailed a bit by the Republicans who are shy of losing the 2018 election coming up.
And how much of an impact do you think the huge cuts to the Environment Agency will be?
Tremendous. It's a 31% budget cut to the EPA, eliminates the climate change program and funding, and it's going to be devastating to be able to ensure that we can reduce global warming. Something else he's combining that with is he's nullified President Obama's what's called the CAFE standards, the corporate fuel efficiency standards, which means the mileage standards of cars, the average car in a fleet. Obama was going to increase that to 37 miles per gallon, and Trump is going back and rolling it back to older days when it was much less than that, which is a backward move, and it's going to be affecting the environment in addition to these 31% cuts in the EPA itself. It is horrendous. I think that the Democrats better speak up, and not just Democrats, but even the moderate Republicans who see that this will devastate the country's society and social fabric and the economy to quite a bit of extent. Because don't forget, when you cut programs, which is programs that people gain money through employment to help each other, it reduces the demand in the economy. The demand in the economy goes down, and that brings on recession once again. It could very well do that once again.
And Peter, so much more money is being moved towards the military. Does this mean that the Trump administration is preparing for a war?
Well, I'm not sure if I could read the tea leaves on that, but I can tell you this. The military spending is the largest of any country in the world today. It is over $500 billion, and it is, if you combine the next 7 countries put together, it is more than their spending, and it's 3 times as much as China, the second largest spender. And there are programs such as the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter, a total boondoggle that costs far more than what was initially thought, and the plane can't even fly properly or turn or climb in a dogfight with the Chinese Air Force, a simulated study with the Chinese Air Force. So that's been but the RAND Corporation conclusion. There are many other weapon systems that I talk about in my book in Chapter 8, which is called Waste, Fraud, and Abuse in the Military-Industrial Complex. In that chapter, I point out there are so many programs like the M1 Abrams tanks, others that are just redundant and not needed, and even generals are saying they don't need it. And here's Trump going to boost up more spending for purchases of more weapon systems that we don't need when we already have some that are not working or we don't need, frankly. And I think it's going to be a very unwise decision. Top-heavy, defense-heavy. It's actually more offense than defense in a sense that he's looking at.
And Peter, what kind of message do you think he's sending to his allies and indeed his critics with this budget?
Imagine him cutting back on State Department funding for programs that help other countries. A small pittance of foreign aid money, he's going to cut it back and make it even less. The United States spends less than 2% of its budget on foreign aid, and he's going to cut that back, and also State Department funding for other aspects of personnel. They'll be laying off a lot of people who are diplomats and other people who are needed for negotiations. It's sending a very bad message to our allies and even to our competitors in the world. And I don't know what Trump is really thinking, other than maybe he's not thinking very clearly on this, in my view.